My name is Kenneth Lukwago, your host, and today we'll be looking at the state of affairs at City Hall following the sacking of three key officials by President Yoweri Museveni yesterday. Now, as you're aware, yesterday President Yoweri Museveni took drastic action, sacking the executive director at Kampala Capital City Authority, Dorothy Kisaka, her deputy, David Luimbazi, and the director in charge of public health and environment, Dr. Daniel Okello. Why? Because of how the Chitezi landfill was handled, leading to a disaster where many lives were lost. With me in studio this evening, we have one of the leaders who has been vocal about this issue, but also a leader in his capacity at City Hall to understand how he perceives this decision, but also the state of affairs now that the three are not in office. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable Erias Lukwago, Lord Mayor of Kampala Capital City Authority.
Thank you. Good evening, Kenneth. Good evening, your listeners.
All right.
I requested the listeners to bear with me.
All right. From the time the Chitezi incident happened, you've been vocal in the news and even at council and in different spaces where you've spoken about this issue, telling us how certain people needed to be held accountable. You even wrote to the IGG in that regard. What was your reaction when you heard yesterday that President Yoweri Museveni has not just dismissed the executive director, but even two other leaders at City Hall?
Well, I would say any reasonable person putting all matters into consideration, especially the gravity of the Chitezi incident, would definitely welcome the actions taken if we are to stamp out impunity and general misconduct. But would hasten again to pose a question: why take that long? Because General Museveni has not been out of the country, he's been around. The country was outraged by this incident of unprecedented magnitude, more particularly in the area of solid waste. Actually, I think hitherto the word waste slide was alien, was not in our vocabulary. And I recall actually journalists were struggling to get the correct description of the incident. Not a mud slide, but now we are used to the term waste slide. So one would expect Museveni to swing the axe right in time, shortly after the incident, to respond to the challenge, the emergency. It has taken him close to 2 months. Of course, not exactly 2 months, but it has taken him all that long. Very, very unfortunate.
Well, one would say he took time to study the issue. He sanctioned an investigation by the IGG, and on the basis of the report, he has avoided a knee-jerk reaction and taken a systematic decision by sacking the three.
By invoking the public service standing orders, you are not applying a knee-jerk reaction tactic. No. That's what it is intended to serve, the spirit of the public service standing orders. That particular rule, which requires interdiction of a particular public officer who is under investigation, was not made in vain. It serves a purpose, to pave way for smooth investigation. I'm sure you are not, I'm sure you have been following the ruckus in the KCCA after the incident, being fueled by people who are under investigation. And it's exactly that particular kind of conduct which that particular rule intended to address.
For instance, which kind of ruckus?
The ruckus in the council, the ruckus even in the corridors, since 10th of October, rather of August. this cases as an institution has not been stable. It's only that you have not been in the corridors. Well, probably you have been capturing scenes, in those ugly scenes in the council, but everywhere, let me tell you, staff have been at each other's neck. Even those senior managers, many of them could not speak eye to eye. I mean, face eye to eye. Many of them. So it's all because of that mutual suspicion that probably you are giving evidence against me. You are working with the IGG to do this and that. Even ourselves, we were sucked in. Can you imagine? Myself, I played the oversight role. You said I've been making a lot of noise. I've been so vocal about this issue because it's part of my docket, part of my obligation. Now, some voices came through questioning why I had been moving from office to office to file the evidence that was required to come up with particular decisions. The office of the IGG, we filed evidence there. Commission, Parliament, KCCA, chaired by the Honorable Segona, we did the same. Even with the cabinet, through Prime Minister, we submitted in all this. And even internally, we constituted the teams to handle those investigations. So, if you do not apply those particular rules, you cause problems as far as investigations are concerned. So it was not about taking half-baked whatever decisions or what you call the knee-jerk reactions. No, it's about compliance or complying with the law.
Right. So when you talk about filing evidence in these different offices, do you want to take credit to say that the sacking of the three has partly been contributed by you?
You see, I am one person who wouldn't want to drum my own trumpet. No. And for heaven's sake, I abhor any attempt by a public officer to hype individual credit. I believe in shared vision. That has always been the hallmark of my leadership. That has been my philosophy, the guiding philosophy. Shared vision. So the totality of this, of our efforts, is the outcome you witnessed yesterday. Only that we have been, swimming upstream, even to arrive at that decision. It's been a swim upstream. Swim upstream in the sense that Mr. Museveni has not demonstrated the will to rein in the perpetrators of this particular incident, the people who are responsible for this, the culprits. He wasn't in any way ready. At least he didn't demonstrate it. From the beginning, even the decision, the directive to the IGG, we got a shock of our life that it was through social media. It was not a formal instrument executed by the president, because at least he should have signed the press statement and officially distributed it. But can you imagine just a tweet on X with that patronizing language? Bazukuru, I'm concerned about this.
Maybe there was official communication to the office of the IGG, but he chose to communicate. He chose to communicate through social media to update the rest of the world about the decision he had taken.
Making those communications through the social media wouldn't be the problem if it is not the primary medium of communication. That's what you have chosen. Let me tell you, I don't know, I stand to be corrected. How many people do we have who are connected, who are on social media? The Ugandans, you owe a duty.
There are many. There are quite many.
There are quite many. Okay, fine. What would stop him from using the orthodox means, the conventional means of communication? What would stop him? I wish I could be given an answer to that because maybe we would argue it was a Sunday, but we have seen him even in the wee hours, some awkward hours, calling the media, all media houses at State House, to issue communications on even small matters like a PDM, whatever. He's on the national media everywhere. So that speaks to his commitment towards dealing with this matter decisively.
I'm quite sure there are people out there who see the way you handle your issues and they say, how is this man handling these issues? And they also think they would handle them differently. So you and President Museveni are two different people.
In which sense?
And therefore you can't act or do things the same way. Not so.
But they are conventional methods of handling public matters which are well known. At least you may fault me on anything, but not on those methods of communication. No. If it's a very serious matter, you can blame me for rushing into calling a press conference, because that can happen. But if an incident happens in the morning, I may call, and in the afternoon I may be addressing it. Social media is a very important tool of communication, not so? And if you're not employing it at State Hall, then there has to be a problem. It is, but messages carried through the social media are always taken with a pinch of salt. They always doubted the seriousness and whatnot, because majority of the people on the net, they like it for social interaction, and I don't begrudge them. I think it was originally designed for that particular purpose. All right. To keep the loved ones connected. All right. Now, let's get into serious business away from social media. It's important, but I'm amused that you're downplaying social media as a key tool of communication. But let's move on. So, what's the state of affairs at City Hall? Is it business as usual? Is it business going on normal? What is happening? Well, I think it's today that Engineer Luyimbazi had to exit. People were there to bid him farewell. It happened that Madam Chisaka was out of the country. For Dr. Okel, I think he left shortly after the news came through. He left the country? No, he left office. I'm talking about leaving office. Okay. I wanted to, the point I wanted to drive home, there has not been any official send-off, which I find rather very, very... Well, if you're when you're dismissed from office with disgrace, yes. Do you get a decent send-off? No, I didn't say decent one. No, don't put words into my mouth. Official send-off. Official send-off. Official send-off. Do you qualify to get official send-off? No, it's not about according somebody. Giving those people red carpet or something like that. But it's about guaranteeing continuity, to ensure that there is a smooth transition or transfer, because we are now in the period of transition. How do we manage it? It's a serious matter. So you needed to get that official handover, because HTS, for all intents and purposes, is an emergency issue, and the people who have been in charge of the same were terminated abruptly. So in that case, you needed to have some kind of formal handover. It has not happened. But again, since General Museveni has been in possession of the IGG report, and was definitely aware. No, actually, he had planned to take that action yesterday. Measures ought to have been taken immediately to have somebody in acting capacity, because I will tell you right now, there is paralysis. It's a stalemate at KCCA, because unlike in the past where you would have the substantive ED, the accounting officer, exiting, then you would have the deputy staying in active. We have never had this situation where all the principals are out. It's unprecedented, and managing it against it requires a lot of ingenuity and innovativeness, because there is no clear blueprint we are following right now. Script, it's not there. The minister was given this task, for heaven's sake. She is also trying to get into the dynamics of new waters, how to swim, how to navigate murky waters of this nature. With all due respect, she is not experienced at dealing with the complex matters of this nature.
How do you tell?
How do I tell? For example, today, I was there. The whole day I was at State Hall. When you create a void of that magnitude, two principles thrown out, immediately you step in. There are two ministers. Whether if it's not the state the substantive minister, the state minister, you would come in, at least now, to allay the fears of this, not allaying the fears as such, but also to create that kind of environment which does not facilitate rumor mongering, idle talk. But today, yes, I'll tell you, and I want to be on record. What I witnessed today, KCCA, all the corridors were beehive of idle talk. That was expected.
Isn't this the ideal situation for you, Honorable Erias Lukwago? You know, this would be the second executive director of Kampala. Someone would say that you've partly contributed to their departure, you know, and therefore you must be somehow celebrating and saying I've scored highly, because you've not been seeing eye to eye with some of these people. And therefore, whatever you're calling a void, one would say, well.
You see, celebrating may not be capturing the right mood.
So what's the right mood?
The right mood is some kind of vindication. It's not celebrating, but I feel vindicated that issues which I have always highlighted at a very, very big cost, attracting all that kind of attack and spite and whatnot, the flak that has been always thrown at me. At least people are having a second thought about it and say, well, this guy has always had a point.
And the point is?
That, because before even the incident, I had raised the red flag about people who were squandering the 4.1 billion, which has always been annually allocated towards maintenance of Chitez. And the purpose was keep those mountains flattened at all times, avoid creation of garbage mountains at Chitez. It's the reason we are receiving and allocating 4.1 billion Uganda shillings. I've always come here to give you information, even before the incident.
But you never mentioned names.
No, I did give the particulars of how it had been disbursed in a very, very irrational manner.
So out of these people who have been fired, who was directly in charge of the 4.1 billion shillings? Because I'm reliably informed, you did write to the IGG breaking down how funds were being misused.
Actually, IGG sent a team of 3 investigators to my office. We had an engagement which lasted for about 3 hours. And I did my best to furnish them with the evidence, which I had earlier on presented to them. Because I reminded them, way back in 2022, shortly after COVID pandemic, we received a delegation from the office of led by herself, the IGG herself, and the 2 deputies were also there. So it was a high-powered delegation. Almost the entire inspectorate was there.
Was the entire KCCA there also?
No, the visit was about, was
to the political leadership.
To the political leadership.
Okay.
It was made to the political leadership. And the concerns were, Kenneth and the listeners, year in, year out, KCCA had ranked high amongst the most corrupt entities in the government. And to be exact, it is twofold. Amongst the local authorities, we are number 1.
In corruption?
In corruption, as KCCA. Amongst the government entities, all government entities, the MDAs, we have always ranked 3rd. We are number 3. And that was a matter of concern to me, who is charged with the duty of dealing with the issues of accountability, because the oversight role largely rests with me. So it was a matter of great concern to me. And when the IGG came, I saw it as a golden opportunity to present the evidence before her. And she assured us they would establish a unit specifically to investigate KCCA. So when they came on the heels of in the wake of Chitezi tragedy, I had the occasion of reminding them about this commitment and also accusing them of laxity and indolence. Indolence in the sense that if you made a commitment to conduct investigation, to set up a special investigating unit, and you do not do so, and this catastrophe happens, you take the blame as well. So that is what we presented before the IG. And all this evidence, like I've said, the 4.1 billion. Can you imagine even that breakdown? For maintenance of Chitezi, I want to emphasize this particular point. For maintenance of Chitezi, we were supposed to buy the necessary equipment because ours was just to flatten the garbage. Now they decide to hire, and on a day we are paying on a daily basis. We had we had one grader and 2 excavators. The grader was being hired at 2.6 million per day. The 2 excavators that were used to spread the garbage, each would also be hired at a sum of 2.5. So total 5 million for both. But when you add on the grader, 7.6 million Uganda shilling. And for the maram, because at every layer you needed maram, because you cannot compact garbage alone. You need some maram to make it at least a bit firm. Remember, you have no mortar there, you have no reinforcement in form of iron bars or whatever, and you are creating mountains. So they would put the cost of maram at 1.5 billion, a whooping sum of 1.5 billion Uganda shillings. And we said, which kind of maram is this, which would cost that huge sum, that astronomical sum of 1.5 billion Uganda shillings? We cried ourselves hoarse on these matters. Unfortunately, before the incident, few were ready to listen. They call it usual bickering. That Lukwago with your usual fights and what, Cry baby. Cry baby. I'm used to that, But there are those who want to dismiss whatever issues we raise because I plan oversight role.
All right.
Yes.
Now, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. From the news, you might have heard that there will be an emergency meeting in Kampala tomorrow to discuss some of these issues that have emerged because of the void created by the sacking of these 3 officials. But earlier on also, the Lord Mayor did speak about a potential corruption scandal emerging with the planned procurement of land where the new landfill is supposed actually to be located. When we return from this break, we'll be digging deeper on these particular issues. But also, as we wait for the acting executive director, we'll also like to hear from the Lord Mayor what kind of person does he expect this time around, now that he has not been seeing eye to eye with Dorothy Kisaka, but also the predecessor who also left that particular office. Now stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum continues after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Topic of discussion today, we are reflecting on the state of affairs at City Hall following the sacking of 3 officials, Ms. Doris Kisaka, the Executive Director, the Deputy David Luimbazi, and Director in charge of Public Health and Environment, Dr. Daniel Okello, over the Chitezi debacle. My guest this evening is the Honorable Erias Lukwago, the Lord Mayor of Kampala, capital city. Earlier on in our news, we were actually told that by close of business today, we will be having an acting executive director. Honorable Erias Lukwago, any news in that direction? Have you heard from the minister? Do we have a substantive, or do we have an acting executive director to stabilize the ship that you think is shaking?
I don't know where that information came from.
Well, we saw the spokesperson at KCCA, Daniel Nwabine, actually saying that today the minister will be announcing the acting executive director.
I honestly speaking, I don't know whether he was just doing PR or whatever. You know the workings of this government. Would you expect that process to be expedited like that? That by close of business today would be having an acting executive? It wouldn't be possible. If you looked at the dismissal instrument, the minister in charge of Kampala was tasked with the duty of first and foremost causing the adverts to be placed in the papers, inviting for suitable candidates to put in an application for the vacancies now through Public Service Commission. But in the meantime, to source around and from amongst the directors at KCCA now, the existing ones, those he would take to the president for appointment in acting capacity. And that is another process altogether. So you would expect the minister to get 2 or 3. No, it can't be only one name.
You know the directors at KCCA at the moment. Who do you want to work with?
That is too much. No, the prerogative is not with me. Of course, I know their competencies, many of them, their dispositions, I know. But I don't know what the appointing authority always has in mind in taking a decision of that nature. I don't know. So it's up to the appointing authority, who has got the prerogatives to determine which kind of person would serve their interests. So that's not up to me, honestly speaking. But to go back to the issue.
But much as you say that you had the audacity today to talk about the process of appointing the executive director of Kampala, and you're thinking that it needs to change.
Which one? Come again? What?
That the process of appointing or arriving at who should be the executive director needs to change. You seem to suggest that.
Yes, the practice is head hunting. And with head hunting, it has gotten problems. Of course, Section 2017, which enjoins the sitting president to exercise the powers to appoint, is a bit vague. Do you know how it is structured? The president shall appoint the executive director in consultation with the Public Service Commission. You ask yourself, what form do these consultations take? How do you expect the president now, a sitting even if it were me, to invite public service, the entire commission, to come and I present to them the names and say, this is what I have, what do you have to say?
Well, the Public Service Commission would check with this person has the qualifications to work within the public service.
So I pick the names and submit them to the Public Service Commission.
They do the vetting.
Do you know that you are stampeding the commission then? Because they can't do the vetting if you are already convinced. The moment you exercise your prerogative of saying, Kenneth, I want you to serve in this job.
But you talked about
Public
applications.
Service Commission cannot
You talked about applications, which means there's an application process. People apply. The Public Service Commission looks at them, then forwards the suitable names to the president, from among which he chooses
you see
who
what
should
happens.
be the executive director.
What happens? That is a perfunctory process, cosmetic purposes, that the Public Service Commission will advertise, invite names of suitable candidates, and probably there will be a vetting process. But the actual process for appointing is totally different. It's absolute prerogative of the president to pick particular individuals, and he uses head hunting, especially with members of the family. And this has been, when I mention this, there are people who are jittery, who want to spew, to twist it and spin it and to try to create all sorts of conspiracy theories and whatnot. But it's known that, you see, he has a daughter who is a bishop, and the wife is a SFD and whatnot. So just because they go to the same church and then you pick this and pick that, I think that practice must come to an end. Not that I have issues with people coming from a particular religion. I'm known for being a nationalist and a person who is not about those petty partisan interests. No. But if you are to get a competent person, I'm not saying these ones were not competent. I've told you the disposition of Madame Chisaka is okay. She may be having those issues which have landed her into problems, but the disposition, well, she's an amiable person. But those issues, the opaque and the shady issues they were raising, that's a matter for her now to answer in those investigations that are going to be conducted. But the point is, why don't you have a competitive process? You get it? You get a competitive process. I'll give, for example, I've talked about Chisaka, of course, the deputy engineer Luyimbazi, and are you advised as to how the processes were done leading up to their appointment? I've always questioned the appointment of Dr. Daniel Okero, one of the people who was sacked. He's been a square peg in a round hole. He's, for intents and purposes, he's a good man. But he had been placed in a position where his qualification would be just useless because he's a dentist. You can't be a dentist and you're in charge of public health when we have so many people who are trained in that. Actually, you would even get people who are trained in urban development, people who are trained in public management, people who are trained in generally public health. You get a dentist who is skilled at how plucking out your teeth and what not, fixing them with the I don't know. So he's an expert in that. And this is not to demean dentists because they yes, they are all trained. And for heaven's sake, if you have a toothache.
I thought his position was more managerial. It's about managerial and not actually
and that is
implementing.
That is actually dangerous because you are supervising people who are more competent on the job, who are more competent, who are experienced. Let me tell you, we have people in that directorate who are at a managerial level. They are managers because you have the director, deputy director, and then managers. There is a manager in charge of solid waste. There is a manager in charge of clinical health. You have a manager in charge of these other things under public health. Then you have supervisors. But you would find, I will tell you, one time we had a person who was taken over by World Bank as a consultant, Dr. Najib. He was being supervised by Dr. Okero. And Dr. Najib, he's now a consultant with World Bank. He handles fecal sirage management. He's an expert in fecal sirage management. You see sewage flooding all over and all these issues of pit latrines and how we are dealing, generally management of sewage, management of feces in the city. It's a very serious challenge we are having. One would say we have 1% open defecation, but it is still a very, very big problem. And that wouldn't be handled by a dentist, I'll tell you. A dentist wouldn't manage that. Because this directorate is very big, even if it were at a managerial level, for example. What he would do is to put in place systems and structures. Can you imagine, as we speak right now, sanitation in general, in Kampala, is not institutionalized. We have no budget line under the current program-based budgeting. We do not have a budget line for sanitation, sanitation generally, because it is multifaceted. It has different components. Yeah.
All right. So now you said in the news earlier, as I was listening to you, that the chain of command at City Hall has been broken. You suggested there is some sort of a crisis there. But then as you elected leaders, what is the way forward? How do you govern the city? How do you implement? How do you deliver the services? Because now you do not have an accounting officer.
It's the reason I had to call for an emergency meeting of all stakeholders tomorrow, because we are supposed even to have a city executive committee sitting today. It aborted on that account that we do not have the accounting officer to facilitate the meeting, not in terms of finances, but also clerical work, because all the clerical work in the institution is done for and on behalf of the executive director. If it were possible, she would be the one taking minutes in the state executive committee, in the council, and all these other meetings, but they are different clerks. So that function is already decapitated, paralyzed. And also very, very many other things, because the head of public service under Section 19 of the KCCA Act is the executive director. So I've decided now to call for a stakeholder engagement tomorrow involving the MPs for Kampala, the mayors of the Division Urban Council, the authority councillors, my colleagues at SEC, and also speakers of the Division Urban Council and the authority. So basically, we consider those different clusters of leaders to be critical in taking particular decisions to give a way forward in this part. Unfortunately, the message coming through from at least the MPs, many have traveled to Mbarara for the burial of Jole Mugisha, which is going to take place on Friday, and they have expressed regrets. So we are trying to see how to manage this issue. All right.
Now, you've also whistleblowed on the issue of purchase of land, which is meant for a new landfill. If we are talking about a landfill, there was even recently a public dialogue where experts actually said we should not even be talking about landfill, but you're going ahead to procure land for that particular purpose. By now, you have not yet announced the winner of the tender.
You see, when the incident happened, we had shortage of alternative sites. I need not to mention this because you have also been part of this journey, the challenges we have encountered along the way with the municipalities within the metropolitan area harshly treating us because they have been so hostile to all of us, to us as an institution. So we had to come up with the processes of acquiring an immediate alternative dump site, not a landfill, because it takes time to build a landfill. It has got so many components, robust infrastructure, technology you do need there. So as a short-term measure, a transient measure, we said, okay, let's procure our own land. And we came up with the specifications within a radius of 43 kilometers and so on and so forth. And of course, the nature of the land was also described. It should be partially on a hill, slanting somehow with those slopes and whatnot. It shouldn't be waterlogged. And also we said it should be circular or rectangular in nature because you needed to have a buffer zone around the landfill itself. So the bids were invited on the premise of those particular specifications or conditions. An advert was placed on 28th of last month calling for bids which would close on 2nd of September, and there would be an evaluation by the evaluation committee on 5th, and the final decision would be made, or announcement rather, would be made on 13th of this month. Today is 25th. Yesterday we had a meeting with all these people because the Right Honorable Kadaga had called for a meeting to review all these other matters that had been discussed. And then the city ministers were there and most of these leaders from within the municipalities. So in the course of reviewing all these matters, it required that they needed to address certain matters internally. So she sent them to KCCA to come and have an interface with me. So they came to the Lord Mayor's Parlour, the minister and state minister. By that time, Luimbas had not been sacked. Even Okero, they were all there and a couple of others. And even the person in charge of the procurement unit, PDU Dorin. So when we sat, we wanted an update. And that was the first issue we raised in our interrogation. Why the delay? Of course, there was no satisfactory answer. We had to abandon that issue. So to cut the long story short, they told us they had finalized the process, they had prepared the report, which was going to be submitted to the contracts committee because it's the final decision-making body that was going to pronounce on the choice they had made of the land to be purchased. We are dumbstruck by the revelations that they made. Now, they said the bids were 22. They had knocked off 21 on different grounds. They were left with only one, which land was also adjacent to the one we have in Idundu.
Where communities have rejected.
Not only that, yes, communities are up in arms, but also the distance. It's 42 kilometers. It's very far. Chitezi is just 14 kilometers, but Dundu is very far. We do not even have fuel to go there. Right now, we have failed to clear the bills for Total. 2.5 billion Uganda shillings. We have just made the commitment, at least to pay 1 billion, and we are left with the balance. Actually, we have not even remitted the money. We are just acting on a promise by government to give us that money. So we said, if we have 136 acres. We bought that land way back in 2016. And it cost us 4.3 billion. Now this land they are purchasing, they advised us to purchase, would cost 250 million Uganda shillings per acre. And our expectation was that at least the range would be 40 to 50 million an acre. But here we are, they are telling us 250 million Uganda shillings per acre. We had to stop it. So going forward, we had to resolve that. You people go revisit the matter. Indeed, they agreed and said they are going to recommend re-advertising.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have set a deadline of 3rd next month, October.
So we are going to continue with a pile of rubbish in and around Kampala.
Very unfortunate. We are still negotiating with the people of Katikoro Mukono. Of course, they have their own challenge. It's a very small dump site, 6 acres. And also Katabi, we hope that. But of course, there is also a proposal to buy, to work on Menvu in Busukuma, 32 acres, 20 belonging to Nasana municipality and 12 to China municipality. We are still exploring all those possible.
All right.
ways. Yeah.
All right. Let's get some feedback from the listeners. We have a comment here coming in. Good evening, Kenneth. George from Bunga. Kenneth, the president has done what he was meant to do, but it's not enough because these are criminals. They must face criminal charges against and be jailed. Instead of working towards common good, they are fighting for supremacy at work. Where does this benefit the common person they are serving? Then we have another comment. Good evening. Thank you for the program. What is the Lord Mayor talking about? The president communicated through all official channels. Actually, the Lord Mayor is one of the problems at KCCA. Let him, Lukwago himself, resign. He's also politicking. That's a comment there coming to you. We have another comment here. Lukwago loves being a political than working. When KCCA does something good, he wants it attributed to him. When bad, he runs away like a headless chicken to the media to protect himself. He should also resign. No one saw Lukwago protest on behalf of the Kitezi people or even run to the media houses about the matter. Whenever Jennifer was around, he made noise on potholes and kept pulling her efforts down. Lukwago has been in office 15 years and can't say something good. And I can't say something good about his effort. Well, that's another comment there. We have another one. Good evening, Spectrum. In my own opinion, the biggest problem of City Hall is too many leaders from different appointees, each of them thinking they are superior. Lord Mayor and his councillors think they are the topmost because they were appointed by the voters. Edie and her team also thinks that they are superior because they were appointed by the top man. That's another comment there. We have another one. Good evening, Anderson. Thank you for the show. And featuring the Lord Mayor. Allow me comment on the issues at KCCA. Honorable Lukwago, I have to congratulate you for having been vindicated for the Kitezi saga by the IGG. You simply did the right thing as required by the law, raising the red flags on several occasions to the political wing despite their deaf ears. 2, it's common knowledge that having great ideas but without funds to support them may render your efforts impotent. My counsel to the Lord Mayor and the political wing, together with the technical wing at KCCA, is to forget their political wrangles and egos and work together to improve service delivery to the people of Kampala. Well, you can hear people writing back and commenting on your leadership style. Some are thinking you should actually resign. Others say, if you know the environment is that bad, why do you insist on being the Lord Mayor? And some people are even discussing today and saying he is even likely to run again in 2026.
I respect all those opinions. That's the beauty with human nature. And I have been a fervent advocate of the freedom of expression, which is guaranteed under Article 29 of the Constitution. But allow me just respond to one issue.
Right.
Lukwago is politicking. What is politicking? What is it that I'm politicking about when I tell you 4.1 billion has been spent on hiring equipment to maintain Chitezi, to flatten the mountains of garbage, but there is no value for money. What is politicking about?
Actually, the IGG report says that instead of spending only 3 billion to buy the equipment, you ended up spending 7 billion because you're hiring.
Actually, much more than that. We do not have even a single equipment. I wish I could share the record of what we have been discussing in the city executive I preside over myself, raising concerns about this practice of hiring equipment using colossal sums of money, yet we would procure our own. So what is so political about it? What is it? I don't know. You see, there are people who are just used to this kind of narrative. They enjoy it because it is just, and I invite Ugandans, let us not be simplistic like that. Even if you hate me, listen to me. Listen to me and get to certain facts. You make your own judgment based on facts. Don't just make sweeping statements. It doesn't help your country. It doesn't help you as either, because you're not doing yourself a service if you just reduce yourself to just talking about trivialities. 4.1 billion Uganda shillings, call it 3.1 billion or 7 billion, whichever the amount is. There was no value for money. You were meant to bring it down the mountains using that money. You've spent the money. You can't account for it. And I tell you, this person should be arrested, should be prosecuted. And you're saying, stop your politicking. You just work together. So I sit down, we share the money. Is that what you're suggesting? Or I leave them? And one thing I will invite people to also appreciate, the nature of my role. You see, when you look at what the position of a political head of the city, you break it down to the common man's understanding. What does it entail to be the political head of the city? Number one is to offer political guidance on each and every matter. That is my work. So when I do my work, that I make a lot of noise, I am politicking. Even as I'm seated in this studio, I'm doing my work. Because I have to offer guidance on each and every matter as the political head. I'm an embodiment of so many interests, those who voted for me and those who did not vote for me. They are all my people. I embody their interests, so I have to speak out. Secondly, what is it that you have done? Do we have to personalize each and everything that has been done? And let me make this also clear.
As you wind up.
Yes, as I wind up. If I come out and tell you that there is no value for money on this, and you ask me, what is it that you have done? Indeed, that is the work I have done. Somebody, right now, I have exposed this fraud. People, heads have rolled. Probably prosecution will ensure. And in the end, we are fighting impunity. Ultimately, you will get services by proper utilization of your resources. Then you ask me, what have you done? You are just shouting. Then I doubt your intelligence.
I'm afraid we have to bring this discussion to an end. Let me thank you, Honorable Erias Lukwago, for creating time to actually come here and indeed update Ugandans on the situation at City Hall. And thank you very much, dear Ugandans, for actually not only listening in, but also contributing through your messages via our WhatsApp line. We'll continue following the events as they unfold at City Hall, and probably hope that after all the dust has settled, people in Kampala will be able to access quality services, and that the garbage problem that we have in different parts of the city will be dealt with as soon as possible. Well, I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwago Anderson.